Melissa Jenkins gazed out the window of her Manhattan high-rise office. The New York skyline was wrapped in twilight, countless lights beginning to twinkle. Through her career as an investment analyst, she had seen this view thousands of times, but today it looked somehow different. Her cell phone rang, bringing her back to reality. "Melissa Jenkins," she answered in a professional tone. "Melissa, it's Mom." The moment she heard Eleanor's voice, Melissa's back straightened. Calls from her mother were rare. Usually, contact with her parents was either for business matters or criticism of her life choices. "Mom, what is it?" she asked cautiously. "I want to talk to you. Your father and I, along with Vanessa, are planning a family trip. A cruise. We'd like you and Jacob to join us." Melissa was speechless with surprise. Her relationship with her parents had remained tense, even though she was successful as an excellent investment analyst. Charles and Eleanor, who had made their fortune in the oil industry, dismissed her career as merely a hobby, and constantly praised her sister Vanessa for her dedication to the family business. Her divorce had made the relationship even worse. 3 years ago, the separation from her ex-husband Brian had not been amicable. Charles and Eleanor accused her of tarnishing the family name. Brian also came from an equally wealthy family, and her parents wanted the best matches for their daughters. Even Melissa gaining custody of Jacob was criticized by her parents as the result of her selfish decision. "Well," Eleanor's voice trailed off. "Your father wants to see you and Jacob. He's been talking about you a lot lately." This was a new development. Melissa couldn't remember the last time Charles had spoken positively about her. "When is the trip?" Melissa asked. "Next weekend. 5 days in the Caribbean on our boat." Our boat referred to Charles's latest luxury, a 52-foot yacht called Elegant Lady. Melissa took a deep breath. "I'll think about it," she replied. After hanging up, she stared out the office window again. Why would her parents suddenly invite her and Jacob on a trip? Was it a sign of reconciliation, or was there another reason? When she got home, the babysitter Maria was playing with Legos in the living room with Jacob. The moment she saw her son, Melissa's heart filled with warmth. 5-year-old Jacob, with his brown curly hair and intelligent blue eyes, was always curious. "Mommy," he jumped up. Melissa hugged him and kissed the top of his head. "Jacob, would you like to see Grandma and Grandpa?" she asked carefully. Jacob had only met her parents a few times, and even then, they had been cold toward their grandson. "Yeah," he answered excitedly. "Can we go on a boat?"
Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too, link below if you're curious.
Grandpa's big boat. Melissa smiled. Her son's pure enthusiasm eased her anxiety a little. Maybe this trip could be a good opportunity. If her parents had changed, she should give Jacob a chance to build a relationship with his grandparents. That weekend, Melissa and Jacob arrived at the port in Miami. The Elegant Lady was docked impressively, with Charles and Eleanor waiting on deck. Vanessa was visible too. "Melissa." Eleanor opened her arms. "Welcome. And Jacob, how you've grown." Charles also greeted them with an unusually warm smile. "Daughter, I'm glad you came." Only Vanessa stood a bit apart, clearly displeased. "Hey, sis," she said coldly. Melissa smiled, hiding her tension. "Thank you, I'm honored to be here." The first 2 days of the journey passed surprisingly peacefully. Charles showed unusual interest in Melissa's work, asking about her recent investment successes. Eleanor was kind to Jacob, teaching him about the history of ships. However, on the third night, Charles called her to the ship's study. "Melissa, I want to talk to you." She sat quietly in the chair. Charles's expression was serious. "My health isn't good," he said in a low voice. "According to the doctors, I don't have much time left. Melissa was shocked. Dad. Listen, he raised his hand. I've been thinking about my inheritance. Vanessa has secured a sufficient position in the company. But you and Jacob need special consideration. I intend to leave most of my estate to the two of you. Melissa didn't know what to say. As the morning sun turned the Caribbean waters golden, Melissa was drinking coffee on the ship's deck, reflecting on last night's conversation with her father. Charles's sudden confession and talk of inheritance stirred complex emotions in her. For years, she had sought her parents' love and approval but was always treated as a disappointment. And now, faced with the reality of her father's impending death and sudden offer of reconciliation, she didn't know what to feel. Good morning, sister. Turning around, she saw Vanessa had appeared on deck. Unlike before, she wore a bright smile. Yesterday's sullenness had disappeared, replaced by an unnatural friendliness. Good morning, Vanessa, Melissa replied cautiously. Vanessa sat next to Melissa, staring at her coffee cup. Beautiful morning, isn't it? What were you talking about with Dad yesterday? Melissa hesitated momentarily. His health. He seems worried. I see, Vanessa's voice was light, but her eyes gleamed sharply. Is that all? The conversation was wrapped in subtle tension but was interrupted by Eleanor and Jacob appearing on deck. Jacob was running around energetically, and Eleanor was unusually smiling kindly at her grandson. Jacob, would you like to make cookies with Grandma today? Eleanor suggested. I'll teach you a special recipe in the kitchen. Jacob's eyes lit up. Really? That sounds great. Melissa was a bit surprised. Her parents had shown little interest in her son before. Was this sudden change related to her father's confession? Despite a faint doubt, she wanted to welcome the budding relationship between her mother and son. Melissa, Vanessa suddenly said. Would you like to sunbathe on the deck this afternoon? Let's talk, sister to sister, it's been a while. Melissa was surprised. Vanessa usually avoided spending time with her. But she thought this might be a chance to repair their relationship. Sure, she replied. I'll have plenty of time while Jacob is with Mom. In the afternoon, Melissa lay on a lounge chair on deck, feeling the pleasant Caribbean breeze. Vanessa, wearing sunglasses, was relaxing in the chair next to her. On the surface, it was a peaceful sister's time, but Melissa felt something off about Vanessa's attitude. You know, we've been made to compete since we were children, Vanessa suddenly said. For our parents' love. Melissa answered carefully. Yes, but I never thought of it as competition. Vanessa laughed. There was coldness in that laugh. Really? You always got everything. Top grades in school, college scholarships, and now a brilliant career. Vanessa, I just chose my own path. I didn't join the family business because I wanted to succeed on my own. I see, Vanessa's voice lowered. But not this time. This time you won't take everything. Melissa sat up. What are you talking about? You always take everything, Vanessa's voice suddenly turned cold. Dad's love, the company's attention, and now the inheritance. Melissa gasped. You were listening to our conversation last night. Vanessa silently stared at the sea. Anger flashed across her face. We've been planning this for years, she said in a small voice. Planning? What plan? Melissa began to feel anxious. Vanessa suddenly stood up, said nothing, and walked away. Feeling confused and frightened, Melissa became worried about Jacob. She needed to find him immediately. Heading to the kitchen, she saw Eleanor and Jacob together. But something seemed strange. Eleanor was trying to make Jacob drink something, and he appeared to be resisting. Jacob. Melissa hurried over. What are you doing? Eleanor turned around, looking surprised. Oh, Melissa. We just finished baking cookies. I also made this special hot chocolate. Mommy. Jacob ran over to her. Grandma gave me a weird drink. It's bitter. Melissa looked at Eleanor suspiciously. I'm taking my son back to our room. But the cookies aren't done yet, Eleanor tried to detain them. Please, let me spend just a little more time with Jacob. No, we're going now, Melissa said firmly, taking Jacob's hand. Back in the room, Melissa closed the door and took a deep breath. Something was wrong. Vanessa's word, plan, her mother's strange behavior, and her father's sudden talk of inheritance. Everything was starting to connect. Melissa hugged Jacob. Are you okay? Don't you feel sick? Jacob shook his head. I'm fine, Mommy. I didn't drink Grandma's drink. Melissa sighed with relief. Smart boy. That night, Melissa locked the door to their room and made plans to disembark at the next port. She took out her smartphone, checking the Coast Guard contact and emergency location sharing app. She remembered her training as a swimming instructor and prepared for any contingency. Morning light filtered through the curtains as Melissa woke up. She had barely slept all night. Jacob was sleeping peacefully in her bed. Looking at the clock, it was 6 in the morning. In 2 hours, the ship would arrive at the next port. There, they planned to disembark and head to safety. Melissa quietly got up and started packing. She stuffed only essential items into a small backpack, checked her passport and cash, and her smartphone in a special waterproof case. She activated the location sharing app, setting it to notify the Coast Guard in an emergency. There was a knock at the door. Melissa froze. Melissa? Are you awake? Charles's voice was heard. She took a deep breath and answered in a calm voice. Yes, Dad. Is something wrong? I want us all to have breakfast on deck one last time. There's a magnificent view. Melissa hesitated. Refusing might arouse suspicion. All right. I'll come when I'm ready. She gently woke Jacob. Good morning, please listen carefully to Mommy. Today is a special day. Jacob nodded sleepily, rubbing his eyes. Melissa dressed him in a waterproof jacket and hid a small life jacket in the backpack. Why do I have to wear a jacket? It's hot, Jacob asked curiously. It's still cool in the morning, Melissa answered, kissing his head. She took out her smartphone and pressed the record button. She needed to leave evidence of whatever happened. When they went up to the deck, Charles, Eleanor, and Vanessa were already seated at an elegant table. The morning sun turned the tablecloth golden, and the sea stretched out calmly. From every angle, it was a perfect family breakfast scene. Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Jacob, Eleanor greeted cheerfully. Her smile was perfect, but her eyes were cold. Come, sit down, Charles offered them seats. The chef has prepared a special breakfast. Melissa sat down with Jacob, remaining vigilant. The breakfast was luxurious. Fresh fruit, freshly baked bread, egg dishes, and fresh juice were laid out. However, Melissa didn't touch anything. Aren't you eating? Vanessa asked. Her voice sounded concerned, but her eyes told a different story. I'm not hungry yet, Melissa replied. Jacob, eat this orange. She handed her son an orange she had peeled herself. The conversation was superficially calm. Charles talked about business, and Eleanor spoke about the next port. But tension hung in the air. Vanessa occasionally exchanged meaningful glances with Eleanor. Look, Charles suddenly said. You can see beautiful dolphins on the other side of the ship. Melissa felt uneasy at his words. She watched Charles pointing toward the edge of the deck. Eleanor and Vanessa also stood up, and they guided Melissa and Jacob to the ship's edge. Where? Jacob asked excitedly. Over there, Eleanor encouraged them to move closer to the edge. Look closely. Melissa felt anxious but gazed at the sea with her son. She confirmed that her smartphone was still recording. There were no dolphins among the waves. Suddenly, she felt a strong force from behind. Melissa instinctively held Jacob tightly. Turning around, she saw her mother Eleanor with both hands extended. There was no emotion on her face. "You will be in nothing," Eleanor said quietly. Her voice was calm, as if she were talking about the weather. Vanessa approached too. A cruel smile played on her face. "Goodbye, nuisances," she sang. At that moment, Charles joined in, and all three pushed Melissa and Jacob simultaneously. Shaking with fear, Melissa held her son tightly. The two fell into the sea. Cold water enveloped her body, and she concentrated solely on keeping her son's body above the surface. With her swimming instructor qualifications, she told herself not to panic. Even while swallowing seawater, she kept Jacob's face above the water. "Mommy. I'm scared." Jacob cried out. "It's okay, son. Mommy's here," Melissa desperately replied. "Take deep breaths and don't panic." When they fell, a life ring had fallen from the ship. Whether by chance or as part of Charles's plan, Melissa didn't know, but she managed to grab it. She placed her son on top of the ring and continued moving her legs in the water. The cruise ship had already started moving and was gradually getting farther away. There was no one on deck. It seemed no crew members had witnessed their accident. Melissa's smartphone was in a completely waterproof case, and the recording continued. While maintaining her composure, she confirmed that the location app was working. Help would come. Until then, she had to focus on protecting her son and surviving. "Jacob, listen," Melissa turned her son's face toward hers. "You are a brave boy. We will be saved. I promise." Jacob nodded, though trembling. His courage filled Melissa's heart. The Caribbean water was warm, and the weather was calm. This was the only consolation. The ship gradually grew smaller and disappeared on the sea horizon. Melissa and Jacob were left in the middle of the quiet sea. "Were Grandma and Grandpa bad people?" Jacob asked in a small voice. Melissa answered, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes, people make wrong choices. But we are strong. We will survive together." She looked up at the sky. The sun was still low. It was the beginning of the day. It might still take time before the Coast Guard received her emergency notification. But she didn't give up. She vowed to survive and to obtain justice. On the sea, Melissa and her son floated quietly. In the distance, birds were flying, and the sky was a clear blue. In a place where death was supposed to await them, they clung to life. And without their knowledge, their story was already beginning to spread around the world. Melissa's smartphone was set to automatically upload to the cloud, and the recorded footage was being saved to her account. A Coast Guard helicopter was flying over the sea. Having received notification from the emergency location system, they had immediately initiated a search and rescue mission. Pilot John Harris was carefully scanning the sea surface, looking for survivors. "This is Echo 3, 2 castaways sighted at southwest coordinates," he said into the radio. "A woman and a small child, adrift at sea." About 2 hours had passed since Melissa and Jacob fell into the sea. They were holding onto the life ring, rocked by the gentle waves of the Caribbean Sea. Melissa's arms were shaking from fatigue, but she never let go of her son. When they heard the helicopter, she wept. A rescue basket was lowered to the sea surface, and rescue team members pulled them up. "Are you all right, ma'am?" a young rescuer asked. "Why were you in the sea?" "We were pushed off the ship," Melissa answered in a trembling voice. "By my family." She immediately took out her smartphone and confirmed that the recording was still continuing. It had captured the moment she and her son were pushed off the deck. "This is evidence," she told the rescuer. "Please contact the police." The helicopter headed to the nearest hospital, where Melissa and Jacob were examined. Apart from mild dehydration and fatigue, they had no serious injuries. At the hospital, Melissa gave her testimony to the police and submitted the recorded evidence. "Unbelievable," police officer Michael Driscoll shook his head. "You're saying your parents and sister tried to kill you and your son?" "Yes," Melissa nodded. "And I have evidence." She took it a step further. Connecting to the hospital's Wi-Fi, she live-streamed an overview of the incident and part of the video on her social media account. "I survived," she said, facing the screen. "And now, I'm telling the truth. My family tried to kill me and my son. They are probably heading to our home now. Without any suspicion, thinking they've accomplished the perfect crime." Melissa's video spread rapidly. Thousands, tens of thousands, and then millions of people witnessed her horrifying experience. Media also began reporting it as breaking news, and the police immediately obtained arrest warrants for Charles, Eleanor, and Vanessa. Meanwhile, Charles, Eleanor, and Vanessa had returned the cruise ship to the nearest port and were heading home on a private jet. Their expressions were satisfied, and their conversation was cruel. "It was perfect," Charles said, sinking into the luxury leather seat. "Now we don't have to worry about the inheritance." "I thought she couldn't swim," Eleanor stated calmly. "But it's fine, it was a deep-sea area, and no one will find them. It will be treated as an accidental death," Vanessa laughed. "Poor mother and child fall from ship, tragic accident. We just have to play the grieving family. And everything becomes ours," Charles added. "Melissa's company shares, all her assets." They arrived at their mansion in Atlanta. Climbing the marble stairs and opening the heavy oak door, they stepped into the dimly lit living room. "Turn on the lights," Charles ordered Eleanor. When Eleanor switched them on, the room brightened. And they screamed in horror. Melissa and Jacob were sitting on the sofa, surrounded by several police officers. Jacob had received a badge from one of the officers and was examining it with interest. Melissa's expression was filled with quiet determination. "Ghosts!" Eleanor screamed. "You should be dead," Charles said in a trembling voice. "The plan was perfect," Vanessa inadvertently blurted out. "Not so perfect, it seems," Melissa said quietly. "I have swimming instructor qualifications. And everything was recorded from the moment you pushed us." She showed her smartphone. "The Coast Guard received my emergency signal and rescued us. And evidence of your crime has already been seen by millions of people." A police officer stepped forward. "Charles Jenkins, Eleanor Jenkins, Vanessa Jenkins, you are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder and conspiracy." Even as Eleanor was being handcuffed by the police, she shouted at Melissa. "You always failed to meet our expectations. Vanessa should have inherited everything instead of you. The company and inheritance belong only to those worthy of the family name." Charles also revealed his anger. "I am the one who deserves to inherit everything," Vanessa asserted while being dragged by police officers. "You were always in the way." Melissa didn't respond to their words, just hugged her son. When the police officers took the three away, the house was finally enveloped in silence. "Mommy, are we not scared anymore?" Jacob asked in a small voice. "It's all right now," Melissa kissed his head. "Let's create our own new family from now on." She rose from the sofa and looked out the window. The sun was setting on the horizon. It was the end of a terrifying day, but also a new beginning. Melissa took a deep breath and for the first time, relaxed her shoulders. For a long time, she had continued to seek approval from her family. But now, she had gained the freedom to live for herself and her son. "I hereby pronounce sentence on the defendants Charles Jenkins, Eleanor Jenkins, and Vanessa Jenkins. Judge Martha Coleman spoke solemnly to the courtroom. The gallery was full, with media from across the country visible. Melissa Jenkins's story had spread on social media as "Survival from the Sea" and had become a symbolic case of family violence and betrayal. For the crimes of attempted murder and conspiracy, I sentence each of you to 25 years in prison. At the judge's words, murmurs rose from the courtroom. Charles's face turned ashen, and Eleanor was rigid. Only Vanessa broke down, crying violently. Melissa sat quietly, listening to the sentence. Next to her sat a psychological counselor and Jacob's representative. Her son was not in the courtroom to protect him from this traumatic event. During the trial, it was revealed that Charles's illness was a lie. It was a trap to lure Melissa onto the boat. The true motive was also revealed. Melissa's recent investment had been hugely successful, and she had quietly acquired most of the family company's shares. Charles and Eleanor feared she would take control of the company. Ms. Melissa Jenkins, the judge turned to her. Your courage and clear judgment saved your life and your son's. And your experience has become a beacon of hope for others suffering from family abuse. Leaving the courthouse, the autumn sunshine warmly illuminated her face. In the 6 months since the incident, her life had changed dramatically. She had purchased a new home and started a new life with her son. Following advice from her counselor, Melissa established an NPO called Reconsidering Family Bonds. Her live broadcast on social media became an educational program, used in schools nationwide to raise awareness of family abuse. "Miss," an unknown woman approached her. "Thank you for your courage. I also had similar family problems. After hearing your story, I found the courage to speak up for the first time." Such words were becoming more frequent. Melissa's tragedy was having a positive impact on many people's lives. A year after the incident, Melissa received a letter from prison. It was from Charles. He had suffered a heart attack in prison and was told by doctors that his prospects for recovery were slim. The letter contained words of deep regret and apology. "I was wrong," Charles had written. "Blinded by greed and the desire to control, I lost sight of what was most important. I don't intend to ask for forgiveness. I know I shouldn't be forgiven. I just wanted to tell you the truth." Melissa read the letter and was overwhelmed by complex emotions. She couldn't forgive him, but she felt as if a certain burden had been lifted from her heart. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Vanessa were having difficult days in prison. Particularly the crime of trying to kill a child was most despised by other inmates. The two were completely isolated and continued to justify their actions. One afternoon, Melissa was sitting with Jacob on a park bench. Her son was playing with new friends, laughing. He was recovering from the trauma of the incident. Thanks to excellent therapists and, above all, his mother's unconditional love. "Mommy, look." Jacob came running over. In his hand was a small wooden boat model. "My new friend's dad made it for me." Melissa hugged her son. "That's lovely," she smiled. She looked up at the sky. In place of losing her blood-related family, she had found a chosen family, a community of people bound by love and trust. The Coast Guard who rescued her, the volunteers supporting her organization, and her son Jacob. She realized this was true family. "Family is something you choose, created by love and trust," Melissa whispered quietly. It was the motto of her NPO organization and also the guiding principle of her new life.